afternoon, everyone. We waiting on Councillor Carlson and Morrow?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then we'll wait a moment. I'm taking care of a parenting issue here at the moment as well, so it'll just be a moment. Councillor Carlson says he's struggling with Teams.
I'll send him a new link just to double check here.
Okay, can I respectfully ask that you send that to Councillor Morrow as well, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
So we obviously don't have quorum yet, so we can't just pass all these before they arrive?
Well, it's not in our existing bylaw or procedure bylaw, is it?
Councillor Carlson just joined us.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, all. My Teams wasn't loading for some reason, so I had to go out and come back in.
I'm just checking with Councillor Morrow.
A new clean link has been sent to him as well.
Thanks, Ryan. For me, it wasn't the link. It was my Teams app just wouldn't load. So.
Just looking to see if I have Councillor Morrow here anywhere. Still not seeing it.
Not on the line currently.
Okay. Maybe what we'll do then is we will begin. My camera is going to be going on and off as I have to jump back and forth between windows here. Okay, maybe what we'll do then is for the sake of time, we will begin the meeting and we'll catch Councillor Morrow up when he arrives. So we'll call the meeting of the July 15th, 2021 Governance Standing Policy Committee to order. Start with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we're gathered on the lands of Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains, and we pay respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural beliefs, heritage, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also located within Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta. We have a fulsome agenda this afternoon, so we will move to that. First, look at the consent agenda. I have a motion from Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Governance Standing Policy Committee held on Thursday, May 27th, 2021 be approved, and the chair and clerk designate be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee receive for information the status of initiatives for July 15th, 2021. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I reviewed them. Nothing stood out unless my colleagues saw anything. I'll call for the vote.
Thank you. I'll just do the usual check-in with Mr. Dalton if there's anything on the status of initiatives that needs to be highlighted.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Question's been called by consensus. That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just interject here for a second?
Absolutely.
Just do a roll call.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Excellent. I'll, Councillor Croson, or Acting Mayor Croson, pardon me.
I'm here.
Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Kaufman.
Obviously, physically.
And Councillor Morrow. 3 members accounted for. Councillor Morrow is not present in the chamber with myself, Mr. Sarsfield, and Ms. Montgrief. And online is numerous members of administration and some guests for item 4.1.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for keeping us on track there, Mr. Westerson. And I'm looking to see, I don't see any other members of council present for this meeting at the moment.
That's correct.
We'll update them as they can as well. Move to the adoption of the agenda, moved by Acting Mayor Croson. Be resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting of the Governance Standing Policy Committee on July 15th, 2021 be adopted as amended. I believe, Mr. Westerson, we have a change to the presentation on item 4.1.
That's correct. Item 4.1, the DICE presentation, pardon me, and I'm just going to get the full title of that because I forgot it. The Digital Customer Service Excellence Program, or program, sorry. There is an amended presentation, a report, and a attachment as well that is waiting for committee's approval to be, I guess, adopted or amend the agenda to adopt that.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Would you be okay sponsoring that?
Certainly.
Excellent. Thank you. The amended report was actually circulated to members of the committee as well as to all members of council. So everyone has had an opportunity to at least look at the amended version as well. Any objection from anybody to do that? That being the case, that is accepted. That is approved. Thank you. We will now then move to item 4.1. DICE. Who is going to start off? Ms. Trent, am I going to you or am I going to Mr. I'm going to Mr. Dalton. Okay, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair and committee members. Just very briefly, I wanted to just remind committee members of why we're here with this. And it might seem kind of strange that technology presentation is coming to governance committee, but again, information technology updates and progress updates on the digital transformation master plan were one of the many things put into this committee's bucket. The team is pretty excited to be here today to provide this presentation. This work, the Digital Customer Service Program, flows out of a series of major initiatives here at the city over the last number of years, including the Smart Cities Initiative, and then more recently, the Digital Transformation Master Plan work. And I recall the last update that Mr. Butler and Ms. Bennett gave on that to council a number of months back. The question that stuck in my mind was, that's great, but when does the action start? When do we actually start to see things change on the ground? And I remember Mr. Butler had described that to this point, the work had really been about describing a process or a path to get to the point where the citizen is put at the center in a digital world and how we change our approach to customer service in a digital world. And it was actually getting to work on this series of individual items of work and strategies that was going to start to move us forward. And what you'll see today is what moving forward looks like. And so again, we're excited to share that with the committee and hopefully ultimately with council. And I would also highlight too that the team has done a good job here of recognizing an opportunity exists to pull a number of discrete projects together and manage them in a more efficient way and deliver them hopefully in a way that better changes the way we interact with and support citizens in the digital environment. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Trent and the team to walk us through it.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton. If I could ask the clerk's office to advance to the next slide, please. So we have been on an exciting digital transformation journey supported by this council and the governance SPC, which begun with Intelligent Communities Initiative, where we've had tremendous success and generated key insight from our citizens and the community on how we could support them digitally and how they wanted us to engage them. In accordance with that, we have a number of initiatives underway, as Mr. Dalton mentioned, with approved initial funding as part of executing our digital transformation plan to address our aging website, which is utilizing expiring technology, as well as a citizen portal and an e-commerce solution. In looking at other municipalities on how they are engaging with their citizens, we are trailing behind. Municipal websites are no longer one-sided content management sites, but are now one-stop shop customer experiences, similar to the likes of an Amazon experience, that provide opportunities to support and engage with their respective communities all in one place. As such, in reviewing and addressing these various initiatives underway, with the support of Tricon Solutions, we are bringing forward today the Digital Customer Experience Program, otherwise known as DICE, which will bring together all of these various initiatives under one cost-efficient, resource-efficient program, putting our citizens at the very center of how we transform digitally. With that, I'll kick off our presentation by doing some brief introductions, and I'll ask Vicki to start us off, please.
Thank you, Ms. Trent. My name is Vicki Bennett. I'm the Intelligent Community Manager for the City of Lethbridge.
Thank you. Kendra, please.
Thank you. My name is Kendra Howard, and I am a partner with Tricon Solutions. Tricon is a professional services firm that specializes in project delivery. We offer professional advisory and staff augmentation services, primarily in the technology space.
And as a reminder, Mr. Butler.
Yes, Trevor Butler, the General Manager of IT Services and Digital Transformation here at the City.
Thank you. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll pass it over to Vicki, who is going to share with us what a citizen at the center experience looks and feels like.
Thank you, Ms. Trent, and thank you to the Governance SPC for giving us time to present on the DICE program today. In the process of developing the Digital Transformation Master Plan in 2019, we reached out to the citizens of Lethbridge for their input. We held a public survey, we did stakeholder interviews, and we participated in the community conversation event in October of 2019. And I know some of the councillors on the call today were part of that conversation. We heard consistently, loud and clear, that our citizens' expectations of online services are changing. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google are changing the landscape of online services, and our citizens' expectations are being shaped by what these private industry tech giants are offering. And our citizens are expecting similar levels of online services from the city. They told us that they want a one-stop shop or a dashboard view of all city services. They also want real-time road, construction, and snow removal notifications. A live events calendar that with a couple of clicks or a tap on their phone, that will show up in their calendar on their cell phone. They're looking for the Amazon experience of online payments. I'm sure we've all shopped at Amazon before, where there are multiple sellers and all sorts of different products that can be purchased in a single shopping cart. So from a municipal services perspective, that might look like adding a dog license, property taxes, swimming lessons, and loading a transit card into a shopping cart and then pay for them all in one transaction. And they're looking for mobility, access from anywhere on any device. We listen to the voices of our citizens, and this program, the DICE program, is about delivering on what they have requested. Next slide, please. So as we reimagine the city's online presence, we want to allow our citizens to engage, transact, and interact with us as they never have been able to before. They've asked for a one-stop shop. We want to provide that one-stop shop. We also want to create internal efficiencies and create avenues for community engagement. We want to provide inclusive and barrier-free access and be innovative. We want to make financial transactions easy, again, that Amazon experience, and really achieve the vision of citizen at the center for online services. Next slide, please. This is the next evolution of customer service. Our citizens will always have multiple options of how they receive services and make payments for them. That includes in person, over the phone, at 311.lethbridge.ca, and the digital customer experience platform will be the next evolution of that customer service. Next slide, please. Now, we all know what our City of Lethbridge website looks like currently. So here are a few examples of some other municipalities that have modernized their website. This example is from Kitchener. Very clean, easy to see what you're looking for. Search bar is easy to find. Click forward, please. This is the City of St. Paul. They've taken a different, more graphic approach. The icons on the left-hand side are the menu. Again, easy to find what you're looking for. Another click, please. City of Denver, again, clean and modern. And one more click is the City of Vancouver. Again, very similar experience, clean, modern, easy to find what the citizen's looking for. Next slide, please. But we're talking about so much more than just a website. Kitchener, Windsor, Medicine Hat, Stratford, and Brantford are just a few of the many mid-sized municipalities across Canada that either have already done this or are in the process of establishing a citizen portal. We're all on the same journey because public consultations have shown the need for this change across North America. If I can point your attention to the box in the top right-hand corner, the City of Kitchener went live with their citizen portal in March of this year. They had a year-long goal, all of 2021, to have 4,000 citizen accounts established, and they reached that goal in 30 days. They found that online transactions increased, wait times decreased, and service times decreased. As you can imagine, this led to increased citizen satisfaction. They have received overwhelmingly positive comments from the citizens of Kitchener, as this is a cost-effective way for public and businesses to get the information that they're looking for. From an efficiencies perspective, again, wait times and service times decreased, but also phone calls decreased, which is a more expensive way of delivering service than an online self-service option. With e-commerce, again, an increase in online transactions. There's been increased citizen participation in online discussions of political issues, specifically by young people, a demographic not traditionally incredibly interested in municipal government affairs. From an voter awareness perspective, there's increased transparency. So there's increased awareness of elections and then increased participation in elections. And with regards to future innovation, the City of Windsor is working towards integrating with other levels of government, provincial and federal, in their citizen portal. And the City of Kitchener has found that having a citizen portal has been a catalyst for even more process improvements. This all sounds wonderful, but what is a citizen portal? Next slide, please. So as I go through the next few slides, the example is from the City of Kitchener. I ask you to imagine how you, as a citizen of Lethbridge, would interact with a citizen portal. And also recognizing the diversity of our community, how might your constituents, your friends, and your families use the portal? It all starts with this login screen, which can be accessed from any page on Kitchener's public-facing website, so it's very easy to find. It's an email and password login or social media credentials if the citizen prefers that. Next slide, please. Once you've logged into the portal, you are presented with your widgets. Now, this particular citizen has opted to see in the first row a live events calendar, property tax information, utility information, and the report a problem widget. If you notice the address on the right-hand side, 6 Barwood Crescent, this is the address that the citizen has identified as their address. So the property tax widget shows the tax information for that address. It's currently showing the total tax assessment for that address, which is publicly available information, but there's a security level. So once that citizen authenticates that they are the property owner, next slide, please, Then the account information for that property is shown. This includes last payment information, whether they're signed up for pre-authorized payments, current balance, etc. Next slide, please. So remembering that the address is 6 Barwood Crescent, the portal will show in the What's Near Me widget facilities that are located near that citizen's address, including the closest pool, arena, dog park, etc. But let's say you don't like the pool closest to your house and the one across town is a few degrees warmer, and that's the pool you want to swim in. You can go to the Pools and Swimming widget. It will show schedule information only for the pools that that particular citizen wants to see information for, not just the ones near their address. It should be noted that swim schedules are one of our most visited pages on the lethbridge.ca website. I would expect this to be a very heavily used widget in our community. Next slide, please. The portal also allows for more than one property per citizen. This is great for people who have rental properties. Maybe they're looking after a family member's property who's on vacation. Lots of reasons why multiple property information would be desired. Next slide, please. The portal is also mobile friendly. The display changes to adjust to the size of the device. This supports the citizen's request for access from anywhere on any device. Next slide, please. The portal is fully customizable. All of the widgets can be moved simply by dragging and dropping to the location of the citizen's choice. They can also be removed or hidden. The example I like to give is in the bottom left-hand corner is the golf widget, and I am not a golfer. So I, as a citizen of Lethbridge, would remove that widget from my citizen portal. And then one day, if I decide to pick up the sport, I could bring back the golf widget. I see that's not a great example to other people on the call. Just go with me on that some people like golf and some don't. But it could be brought back at any time if I decide to join you guys one day. The city can also turn widgets on and off. Today it is 34 degrees Celsius. We probably don't need the snow removal widget today. That could be turned off and then brought back in the winter when it's more useful for our citizens. Next slide, please. The portal can also show non-municipal information. We've got some provincial data that's being shown here in Kitchener. The COVID-19 widget shows the facility open and closed information as per the province of Ontario guidelines at the time. There's also a citizen in Kitchener that requested the hospital wait times widget, and so they were able to build this for the citizens of Kitchener that have the 3 hospitals in the area, and it shows the emergency room wait times for each hospital. This can also be done for other provincial or non-municipal data, such as school closure information and area highway conditions. Next slide, please. Notifications in the portal, again, are fully customizable. Citizens can identify how and which notifications they wish to receive. So, for example, if there's a planned power outage or roadworks going on near a house, they may say, I want to see notifications by that via email, and those ones will come through via email. But if a new community event is posted, they say either I want to receive an email, or maybe I just want to read about it next time I log into the portal. Again, fully customizable to the individual citizen. And finally, next slide, please. The notifications are shown in the portal when the citizen clicks on the little bell icon in the top right-hand corner and the notifications drop down. You may notice that this is familiar because it's similar to Facebook, and that is very deliberate because a familiar technology means there's less of a learning curve and the citizens become very comfortable with it very quickly. So now that I've shown the vision of the DICE program, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Butler, who will speak to how this fits into the larger digital journey.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett.
Next slide.
Yep, next slide, please. Everybody can hear me okay? Awesome. Okay. Thank you. We are very excited to be with you, members of the Governance SPC, to share what we believe is a very visionary initiative, and as Mr. City Manager has shared, a continual path forward. It's important to note that the DICE initiative has been shared that we are proposing is not a new initiative, but a step on a larger journey that began back in 2014. And I'd like to review just a few key parts of that journey. Back in 2014, Council approved new Initiative 27, which was the Intelligent Community Initiative. It was approved by Council, it was funded by Council, and it was under your leadership. And as Ms. Trent has shared, we've had tremendous success over the last 6 years. When we began, we were working to develop an ecosystem where our community could thrive. And it is important to realize now that we did not know a pandemic was on its way. We knew we needed to be visionary. We knew we needed to invest in tomorrow, but I think we would all agree that we didn't know just what level of changes were coming, nor the emphasis on digital that they would bring. Today, we recognize the incredible success of these initiatives, all because of the investment that City Council made in us and the trust that you placed in us. 6 years ago in 2015, we began by collecting 22 different leaders across our community with the goal of developing a community-based strategy, which we've referred to as the integral strategy. Its vision was simple, that Lethbridge would be vibrant, that it would be a thriving community and one that was a gateway to opportunity. In 2016, due to this work of the integral strategy and other actions that we had taken, we received the Smart 21 recognition, which is a global recognition from the Intelligent Community Forum. We also in this year began working on our broadband strategy. In 2017, we participated in Infrastructure Canada's Smart City Challenge, which if members of the committee recall, the entire focus of this challenge was to improve the lives of our citizens and to address a community-based challenge. It was in 2017 that we began working on something that we originally called the Online Services Delivery Strategy. We renamed it to the Digital Transformation Master Plan, and we set our sights on transforming how citizens desired to interact with their local government and consume digitally enabled services. In 2018, we partnered with CGI to help us develop this strategy. In 2019, we began where we believe all of our initiatives need to begin, with our citizens at the center, following human-centric design principles. As Ms. Bennett touched on, we started with public surveys, reaching out directly to our citizens. We had targeted stakeholder interviews with key leaders and individuals across our community. And our most recent community conversation, which was held at the ATB Center, which has the last one, and it seems so long ago as we have a pandemic in between those times. We focused on understanding the needs of our citizens, and most importantly, how they wanted to engage with their government and consume services. In 2020, we brought this master plan back to members of council for your review and eventually for your approval. And since that approval, we've executed on 2 different preparatory projects, which all are focused on ensuring that this HALO project, which the master plan identifies as a citizen-centered portal. The first of these was a digital service standard, which looked at standardizing what that interface and what the experience would be for any of our web properties in a citizen accessing them. And we also engaged in what we called an automating IT infrastructure strategy, which really looks at modernizing our infrastructure as it relates to technology infrastructure. We're very proud of what we've accomplished over the last 6 years, and we're excited to focus our attention on tangible deliverables relative to the digital transformation journey. And to discuss a few of those parts a little more in detail, I'll turn some time to Ms. Kindra Howard, partner for Kindra Solutions and our partner on our digital transformation journey, as she'll introduce herself a little bit more and overview a bit more of the component parts of our digital transformation roadmap. Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
I'm sorry to jump in front of a guest, especially. We appreciate you being here today, Kindra.
No problem.
This has been delayed 3 weeks. I'm wondering if, just for the sake of time, the committee has actually read the presentation. We understand the necessity for context for the broader community, but for the sake of time and having the time to focus on the options, can we jump to options? Is that okay?
Most certainly.
If that's all right, thank you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you. Excellent. So in the pursuit of executing to this strategy, We came up with 4 different approaches before we landed on DICE. Those included option 1, which is maintaining our current existing environment. Option 2, segmenting the program into individual projects. Option 3, phasing out the deliverables over a series of years, mainly using internal staff. And then option 4, consolidating the scope of the individual initiatives into the digital experience, customer experience program. Next slide, please. The first option was simply to put the current website onto life support to extend its existence as long as possible. We quickly determined this was not a feasible option, as the city would be putting itself at risk that the website simply stops working or that its dated technology opens the floodgates for hackers to take it over, resulting in a significant reputational impact. Not to mention the fact that it does not align with the current cloud strategy and would therefore increase the organization's technical debt. This essentially puts us back to right where we are today, and ultimately it just delays the inevitable.
Kendra, are you with us still? Everything okay there?
No, sorry. I'm getting some strange activity on my computer.
You haven't been hacked through our website, I hope.
Oh my goodness.
Case in point.
Exactly. One moment, please.
No problem.
My apologies. If you can still hear me, I need to reboot my machine. I'm not quite sure what's happening here. It's jittering in and out. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. No
your
problem.
sound, yeah, your sound is kind of kicking in and out. So if you need to reboot.
My sincere apologies. This is the first time
Nope.
this has ever happened, but of course it has to happen right now. I will be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
since we have a brief second, can somebody explain increased technical debt to Jeffrey? Me.
Yeah, I'm happy to, Councillor Carlson. Very, very similar to a bank account. We talk about financial debt and technical debt, and the more customization and the more work we need to maintain aging solutions, the greater number of debt and resourcing we need to apply to keep that operational. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Chair, I don't know, while we're waiting for our guest, if you would allow some questions on the points we've already heard.
Absolutely. It's a good use of our time. I'm going to guess Councillor Carlson has a couple of questions.
I do, and I've forgotten them because I was writing them down and I left that paper upstairs. The question was around the widgets. Who designs the widgets? Are those in-house, or is that an add-on cost, or how are the widgets created?
You bet. So I would first preface that with the images that we shared from Kitchener is a particular solution from a particular vendor. And in that situation, those widgets were a base package that Kitchener subscribed to, and then they worked both with on-site resources and the vendor themselves, not necessarily to create those widgets, but to connect those widgets to back-end systems that then allowed the information to be pulled forward in the experience for the citizen.
Okay, and thank you. So would that be an add-on cost to the financials that were provided in the package, or are those?
No, it is assumed that would be part of that cost. In the Kitchener example, they subscribed to a base number of those, which then was part of the licensing cost in which they procured.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Crowson, did you have any questions you wanted to ask?
Yes, I actually just had one. When Ms. Bennett was talking, I heard something I want to just confirm. Can this be used by renters or only homeowners? It sounded like you sort of had to be connected to a property. Can this be used by somebody who rents, or is it for the homeowners? That was just a concern I had.
Sure. Ms. Bennett, do you want to take that one?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Crowson, for the question. The property tax information likely would be best used by the owner of the property. but the renters would have opportunity to access and use all other areas of the portal. For example, the swim schedule information, the closest dog park information, all sorts of other city services that a renter would consume today could be accessed through the portal.
So it's going to be as open format as possible. It's just things that are legally assigned to one person. They'd be the only ones able to access. Just to be clear.
Okay. Absolutely.
You bet. If I could just add a little bit, just because I would put in maybe Miss Bennett's address wouldn't mean I could see her property tax notice per se, but there's a fair bit of access privacy controls on the back end. So some of that information would remain private to the owner, where others, such as a swim location, is pretty public information.
Okay, I just want to be clear on that. As a renter, I didn't want to be left out of the system.
Is it set up then in a format of, I don't know who's using the CRA My Account, where you have your personal information available, but there are elements of that you can actually ascribe or give access to other individuals. Is it that type of context then? Or is it when it comes to property ownership, I'm the property owner here, I'm the only one who has access to that?
Yeah, I believe what we've seen so far, it's only the property owner, where the My CRA, as an example, or My Alberta account has what's called federated access. That would be fairly complicated to do, but it is something that we could look into.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just
Yep,
a follow-up on that. I think Ms. Bennett said that an individual user could have multiple properties. There are properties that have multiple owners. Does that work as well? Say I co-own with Jeffrey and Belinda on a, I don't know what we'd own.
That's not well, good example.
Yeah, not a golf course. But is that something that is allowed?
That is something that could be considered, all going back to the privacy side of who has access to what and who legally is part owner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then following this through, corporations then can have access to this as well. So if I'm a numbered company and I own land within the city, I will be able to create a profile that would provide me access to my land information.
That is correct.
Okay, so Councillor Carlson, to your point, if you, Councillor Crowson, and I own a golf course, we would be best to form a numbered company, which would provide us access then to the portal.
I'll make a note.
Hypothetically.
I have no idea how to do that, so that's has she returned? Is she logged in again? Kendra, is she back? I don't see her on here yet.
I saw her and then she disappeared. So can I ask one more question?
Please, yes, go ahead.
Let's just cut to the chase on this. So when I was reading your report, there's three things. Our system we have is old and is going to be, unusable in a couple of years. You have the money, resources, et cetera, to do this, and it's better for the residents.
That's
all right.
Correct.
To me, that's the nutshell of where we're looking.
Yes.
Oh.
Mr. City Manager, was it just the thumbs up or? Oh.
Yep, that was it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Councillor Carlson, although I see Kendra is back, Ms. Hudson's joined us again.
I'll wait till the end then.
Okay.
But one point, Mr. Chair, I've lost my connection to the link for the presentation. I just shut it. I just closed it, and now I can't reopen it. Is there something that someone can help me? I'm trying to.
Mr. Westerson or Ms. Moncrief, can either of you just quickly send a copy of the presentation again?
On its way right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Thank you. Please, Kendra, welcome back. You can.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh,
Murphy's Law, right?
Nope. If this were in person, you wouldn't need to reboot, or we're assuming you wouldn't need to, so we understand the technology needs. So please continue.
Thank you, and I hope that there will be no more interruptions. So I'll continue with where I was. We were discussing the maintaining current existing option.
And I think you were ready to go to the next one, Kendra. You talked about
Yeah.
life support, and I saw a lot of nodding of the heads that we don't want to be on life support. So you could probably go to the next one.
Perfect. Got that point across. Excellent. You can advance the slide, please.
Yeah, I think we're on number 2 now.
Yeah. Okay. I can only see part of it. Excellent. So the second option was actually on the horizon to occur, which was segment the platform into individual solutions such as the citizen portal, a content management system, and an e-commerce platform. But we quickly realized that having separate, highly interdependent solutions did not make sense and would actually cost more to support multiple platforms. Never mind adding to the already very confusing end user experience and requiring multiple RFPs and some costly integrations. Next slide, please. The third option includes extending the implementation schedule over approximately 5 to 10 years, which again puts you at risk of being exactly where you are today at that point. This option does not align with your vision for citizen at the center and risks low adoption if the community does not see frequent and engaging enhancements to the site. Next slide, please. The last option is to consolidate all of these interdependent features and functionality into a single solution through a carefully coordinated but expedited technology program. This aligns all of the core capabilities into a single platform, aligns with all of the key organizational strategies, and will integrate with the most used applications across the entire municipality. We know these solutions already exist, and our RFP will seek to find the best one for the city. Next slide, please. After considering the options, it's recommended that the City of Lethbridge proceeds with option 4. We feel it not only aligns with where you want and need to go as an organization, but is the most cost-effective, high-value, and high-benefit approach for your stakeholders, the citizens. It puts them at the center, provides a holistic solution in one fell swoop, and allows your internal resources to get trained by professionals during the lifespan of the program so they can learn on the job and support the new system into the future. We expect this approach to deliver a solution that will bring economic development to your city and provide your citizens with an engaging way to interact with their government on any device, from anywhere, at any time. Next slide, please. To proceed with this recommendation would require the following steps. You would need to consolidate the disparate but related website projects into a digital customer experience program. You would need to collect the key requirements from the various groups across the organization. Then we would need to procure a vendor to provide the platform for these digital services. Then we recommend you expedite the implementation of this system over a 12 to 18 month time frame using a combination of internal and external resources. This will enable you to preserve the intellectual property gained throughout the various projects. Then lastly, we recommend that you transition this new platform into an internal product sustainment team who will then continue to enhance the functionality of your platform into perpetuity. Next slide, please. Thank you. We expect to do this work would take approximately 18 months, which includes this work right now, and cost approximately $3.6 million. Please note this includes a $1.2 million contingency, as we currently have a plus or minus 50% confidence in our estimate, as we have not yet put this out to the market to RFP for bid. Once that's done, we'll have a much better idea of how much this program will actually cost. And now I will pass it over to Jennifer Jared from the finance team, who will explain how we could possibly fund this program.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Kendra. So this slide shows the total funding required for the DICE program of $3.676 million, which includes a plus minus 50% contingency. The initial funding we have through life cycle funds and scheduled replacements is $860,000. This will bring the completion funding required down to $2.816 million, and I will be going over some options on how City Council could choose to fund this. Next slide, please. So to better inform Council on how to provide the completion funding required, we wanted to take a look back at how we previously funded the existing website or content management system, which is only 1/3 of what the DICE program would actually deliver. We went back to the May 3rd, 2010 City Council resolution. The total budget was $1.166 million to fund the existing website. This was funded from the e-Services Initiative and Corporate Systems Lifecycle. Also noted in the resolution was direction to build lifecycle management of corporate data, information, and technology to support the ongoing operations of websites. Next slide, please.
And if I may just interject, Jennifer, we wanted to demonstrate a few options for governance SPC in terms of funding, but we wanted to highlight that the corporate systems lifecycle was what was used for the previous website and is sort of what that fund is constructed for in terms of funding the work that we were proposing in terms of website and the digital transformation plan. So we will highlight that's the recommended source, but provide council with some alternatives to the extent they wanted to explore them. Please continue, Jennifer. Thank you.
Yeah, so the corporate systems lifecycle, as Lisa mentioned, is the funding that we used last time to fund the existing content management system. The corporate systems lifecycle is used to fund replacements and enhancements of the city's existing corporate systems. The balance as of December 31st, 2020 is $8.4 million, of which the unallocated portion is approximately $3.4 million. The unallocated balance is meant to be used for other emerging system needs, such as this DICE program. Option 2 is to use anticipated 2021 and 2022 operational surpluses. We are currently projecting to have operational savings from ongoing operational adjustments and efficiencies. The third option is to use 2020 business unit carryover. The balance of carryover as of December 31st, 2020 in the unaudited report was approximately $3 million, not including boards and commissions. As council is aware, 50% of corporate and business unit surpluses over the 4-year operating budget cycle will fund one-time budget initiative during the next operating budget. Using this as a funding option will take away from the one-time allocations that will be available for the next city council. And now I will pass it on to Lisa to talk about next steps.
Thank you, Ms. Jared. With that, we want to explore next steps with Governance SPC. And if I could ask the clerk's office to advance to the next slide, please. And I'll ask at this time that our city manager, Mr. Dalton, close us out. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. And I can see most of the slide, but I'll just go to Councillor Croson's question / comment around what we were asking for. And that's essentially it. And it's depicted on this slide. So we appreciate the time today, and we do think that we're at a pretty exciting point in terms of being able to take a significant step forward in customer service and how we interact with citizens and how they access government.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your work on this and for the information. I appreciate the reconsideration. I apologize that we delayed you by 3 weeks, but you came back with some additional work and considerations, and that actually took care of 99% of the questions I had. So thank you for that. Councillor Carlson, do you have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just around the funding, the plus or minus 50% contingency. That's the biggest contingency I've ever seen, I think. So that's just because of the uncertainty around this. So it could come in, I noticed it's a plus or minus. It could come in cheaper, I'm guessing.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I take this one on.
Please proceed. Yes.
In the project management practice, there's a concept of progressive elaboration. So as you get further along in the project, you learn more and more. This is something that we've never done before, but as a project delivery solution provider, we have a good heuristic of how much it could cost. The solution will really dictate the cost at the end of the day. And right now we're sitting on an RFP to put that out to market to see what what the resources are going to cost and what the platform is going to cost. So because of that uncertainty, we do have to have a pretty significant contingency. But as I mentioned before, as we receive responses, we'll have a much smaller contingency because we'll actually know the solution, we'll know the cost of the resources, and we'll know the duration of the project, which is really where all of the estimates are driven from.
Thank you for that. Just to follow up a tiny bit, it looked like an 18-month window. How long till the RFP comes back, so there's some certainty around the cost?
Ms. Bennett, would you like to take that?
Sorry, yes, please.
Sure, I can take that on. We are developing the RFP now with the hope to post it as soon as City Council approves the initiative, which we are aiming for July 30th. Receiving responses over the month of August, making decisions in early September, and having a vendor selected by the end of September of this year.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. If I can just jump in on that. You're going straight to RFP, you're not doing RFQ to get there?
Yes, if I may jump in, some of the times what we'll do is we'll actually start with an RFI to understand the landscape and those types of things, which is one of the reasons why we're working with Tricon Solutions, as they have a good sense of that. And we'll be following what's known as a BAFO process, so we can work on a best and final offer. And that's the process which we're following, so that we still have an opportunity to fill any gaps that we might have on what different market solutions may entail.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jarrett, on option 3, 50% of business unit surplus, is that practice or policy?
That's normally how we do it, and I believe there's a resolution that was passed a while back. I'd have to look back to see exactly how it was passed. Okay, all right, thank you. Just wanted to know if this has just been the practice that council has in which council is engaged, or if this is an actual policy. I know we passed resolutions on this. I see Daryl's raised his hand.
Yeah, to Councillor Kaufman, this is actually a resolution. I don't have the exact date of the resolution at my fingertips here, but I know that we reference it within our unaudited report as a council resolution. It's probably back in the 90s or earlier for council resolution. It's been a long-standing practice long before my time.
Okay, thank you. You got a couple of nerds on the line here who will look at that, I'm assuming, as soon as the meeting's done. So thank you for that. Maybe Mr. Matthews, to you, in conjunction with Mr. Butler, perhaps. I know that over the years at Audit Committee, you have raised awareness of the numerous computer software programs we have for the organization. And of course, there's going to be an interconnectivity with any sort of new website on this. Does this actually include a broader examination of all of the software we use, or is that a whole separate beast in and of itself? I don't know which of you two wish to answer that.
If I can take a stab at this, and yes, Councillor Kaufman, what we'll be doing is standing up this portal and then integrating with a number of the different products we have. And so, yes, in very much we'll be looking at an exercise that we refer to as a rationalization of software to understand systems of record, to pull on the appropriate data, which very much could lead to a decrease to the volume of products that we have, integrating them into this portal.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Crowson, did you have any questions?
Thank you. I'm good at this time. I think I've heard enough to be fine if we recommend it forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just the final question I had, are there any city services that people currently access that wouldn't be integratable? Is that a word? Have the ability to be integrated? Because I can imagine the frustration of a citizen who signs up and gets everything in place, but still has to go to a completely separate app or something to do transit, perhaps, or something along the. So, are there any of those that would not be transferable, or what did Mr. Butler call it? Irrationalized?
Yeah. So I don't want to come out and say guaranteed everything is in scope. Many, if not all of our systems have what we refer to as rational databases. Our technical team then works to integrate those. I'm not aware of any that would stand out to me at this point in time where it would be a no-go situation. It's also really important to note, due to the citizen-centric approach that we are taking and desire to continue to take, that we want to start with those that are most valuable to our citizens and move through those. So there may be some that are later on in the journey, but I think the goal is, if it's a desired service of our citizen, that it's our priority to move forward on through this process.
And Mr. Butler and Councillor Carlson, if I may add, one of the exciting parts about this technology is actually talking about the future, is that it could be leveraged for employee at the center, for our employees at the city of Lethbridge as a future state. So if anything, I would see this technology being further enhanced as we go forward as an organization, to the extent that it's supported.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent, thank you. If there are no further questions, and I still just did a quick check, I don't see any other members of council present. If there are no other questions, thank you all very much for the information for the presentation, and we will move to resolution. I'm just calling up my... So I have a motion on item 4.1, Digital Customer Service DICE program, from Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends City Council approve the DICE program as presented. Now, you should probably identify which option you would like to deliberate.
Thank you. I believe the recommendation was for option 4 in the DICE and option 1 in the finance. So I don't know how to word that.
Thank you, Ms. Moncrief. If you could encapsulate Councillor Carlson's excellent verbiage there.
From the menu, he has chosen 4 and 1.
It was a la carte. I like it. And a side of mushrooms.
A side of, let's not spend all the contingency.
Yeah.
Noted.
Funding considerations. The language I'm not as concerned about adding myself, but as long as we know that it's the 4th option in the implementation, I think it is. Yep, and the 1st option in financing. However that needs to be worded, I'm fine with, as long as it makes sense to everyone. If that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask Ms. Moncrief if, as outlined in option 4 in implementation?
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you for removing the brackets, in option 1 in completion funding finance as presented, or I guess it's period after finance.
And we don't, because we've outlined option 1 in the completion funding, we don't actually have to have the amounts in there, like an up to 3.676, or I guess it'd be up to, because we've already got some, up to 2.816. Do we need that?
I think our colleagues at council would prefer to know exact numbers.
Agreed.
For some reason, putting up your hand and spending an unknown amount of money isn't, good.
So after completion funding finance, then Ms. Moncrief, it would be to a maximum of, and then
2.816, I believe.
Million.
I believe. $816 million. Sorry, yeah. Yep. 2.816.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just because this will go to our colleagues, why don't we put in the whole thing then? From corporate systems life cycle. That way they don't have to go through the full presentation and everything to find all the ins and outs. It's spelled out. It's 2.816, and this is where it's coming from. If that meets with the will of my colleagues.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Absolutely. Clearer is better. Are you looking to reword outlined to something, Ms. Moncrief? As identified, as presented?
Sorry, Mr. Westerson here, trying to identify just the placement of this for the sake of the public when the agenda is recaptured, republished with the new attachments that indicate where this comes from. And so this funding model and this dollar value was on a slide within the PowerPoint, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I can't tell you what number slide it was. I can tell you what it looks like. That's about it. But I think that that makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to everyone else. Unless there's anything further, Mr. Chair, I'd call for the vote.
Councillor Crowson, any debate or commentary?
I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you everyone for the work and efforts in this, and I will support this recommendation as well. I've heard the question called, so call the question. Anyone opposed? We'll assume you were, that would reflex the vote in favor.
Scratching my ear.
Seeing none opposed, that's carried. Again, thank you everyone. Thank you very much, Ms. Howard, as well for your presence here today. And we appreciate the work being done by staff. Ms. Bennett, your passion for this oozed into the presentation as well. So thank you for that. Appreciate the work that everyone has done. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure. Great to meet everyone.
Thank you. Members of the committee, are you requiring a little break? It's been an hour, or are we prepared to move into item 4.2? I know the response from one person. Councillor Crowson is excited. So let's just move in then to item 4.2. Procedure bylaw. New procedure bylaw. Councillor Crowson, Acting Mayor Crowson actually was the one who chaired the subcommittee, which was a combination of herself, myself, with work being provided by the clerk, Mr. Westerson, Mr. Sarsfield. So I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Crowson for an introduction. And is Ms. Hilford present as well? Are you walking us through a presentation as well, Ms. Hilford?
I am. I'm in chamber along with David.
Excellent. Oh, there the two of you are. Thank you. I'll just turn it over first to Acting Mayor Crowson for an introduction, and then she can turn it over to you, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
My introduction is very short. It's mostly thank yous. So what you see in front of you is 3 years of work. I looked back at my schedule, and we've been working on this for 3 years, and it's involved numerous people. And we have to thank everybody involved. This started under Alita Neufeld when she was still the city clerk. Of course, Ms. Hilford, Mr. Westerson, Mr. Sarsfield, and from the city solicitor's department, Mr. Lowen and Ms. Chigahiro. All of them have been involved, and this has taken hours and hours of work. And Councillor Kaufman and myself have been, able to be involved with this for the past 3 years. And so this is coming out of a lot of things. It's coming out of the governance review. It's coming out of how to better create the rules so that everybody understands them and everybody can feel more comfortable about participating. So this bylaw is part of that. And when you look at this bylaw, I think one of the things you need to look at is under the interpretation, number 4, the rules contained in this bylaw must be used to facilitate progress and must be applied in the spirit of fairness, equality, and common sense. 2 guiding principles I know Councillor Kaufman and I had on this was plain language, make it understandable so everyone can use it. Make sure it applies across council, the committees, has the public in there, everything's all inclusive, and that it actually makes the work of council easier and better. So that's what we came in as an understanding, and now our colleagues will see if we have achieved that. So that's what we were hoping to do, and we'll move forward. So again, thank you to everyone involved, and after 3 years, here it is.
Thank you. Just before you begin, Ms. Hilford, my apologies. Upon his arrival, Mr. Lowen actually participated in conversations as well, as did Ms. Shigehiro, both from the legal department. So I was remiss to mention them. Thank you for turning your camera on there, Mr. Lowen, to remind me. Even in the context of plain language, we had legal involved. So thank you as well for your participation. And over to you, Ms. Hilford.
Thank you, Chair Kaufman and members of the committee. So we are pleased to present the procedure bylaw here today. Next slide. So the purpose of this procedure bylaw is to establish clear, transparent, consistent, fair rules for conducting business at meetings for council and committee members, administration, and the public to follow and participate in governing the municipality, and for council in establishing council committees. In 2006, Council adopted the current procedure bylaw, which was 15 years ago and some time ago. And then early in 18, as Councillor Crowson mentioned, the Open and Effective Government Committee approved a subcommittee with Councillors Kaufman and Crowson as members to review the procedure bylaw. Next slide, please. The recommendations in the report state that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council consider the new procedure bylaw for 3 readings and adoption, repeal the current procedure bylaw, repeal the bylaw to limit terms of service on boards and commissions, because we incorporated that information into this bylaw, and as well repeal the committee's policy committee. We also incorporated that information into this procedure bylaw so that we'd have one document with all the procedures rather than many documents, with an effective date of October 22nd, 2021. And that date was chosen as it is after the election, but prior to the swearing-in ceremony, with the new council being sworn in. And the timing also coincides with the council orientation of new and returning members of council, to which a session of this procedure bylaw will be included. It also allows time for current and potential new members of council and current members as well as administration to familiarize themselves with this bylaw before it is effective. Next slide, please. This bylaw aligns with Council's strategic goal of ensuring accountable leadership that focuses on open, accountable, and transparent decision-making. The bylaw accomplishes this by facilitating understanding and clarity around procedure for council and committees, by introducing efficient processes, by incorporating procedures for public participation and for the public to access meeting records. It insulates against legal challenges, communicates fairness, and ensures points of view are heard, and finally incorporates plain language principles to the proceedings of council. Next slide. As well, a reimagined council talks about conducting a governance review, structure council committees to support council strategic goals, and review and revise our agenda and meeting processes to better serve council and the community. All these have been accomplished or are in process, and as a result, revisions to the procedure bylaw are required. Next slide, please. Council's guiding principle of good governance aligns with this new procedure bylaw by council owning their processes and making improvements to support good governance. Next slide, please. It is best practice to review a procedure bylaw once every 4-year term of council as well. Next slide. So what has changed? Well, the current procedure bylaw has 32 pages and 9 pages of schedules, and the new bylaw has 33 pages plus 13 pages of schedules. There are more definitions in the new procedure bylaw, and as well, the significant changes are noted in attachment 2, the summary chart of changes, and there are 32 of them. Next slide. Still to be determined. So when I did my final review of the bylaw, an election is heavily on my mind right now, I realized that maybe there were some more considerations for a committee to include in the bylaw. So those are listed here, and they are shortlisting and interviewing public members by council members during an election year, Section 38. Nominating Committee considering appointments of council members during an election year, Section 30. Number 3, process for determining the deputy mayor and acting mayor schedule. Number 4, meetings during an election after nomination day. And number 5, the bylaw process, sections 198 to 204. In the current bylaw, there are 18 clauses with regards to this, and now there are 7. So it just needs to be reviewed for completeness or reference to the MGA to ensure that nothing's missing. So this concludes my presentation, and we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Guilford. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm guessing since the 2 other members of the committee were heavily involved, I'll be having the bulk of the questions. Quick question. Thank you, Ms. Holford, and thank you, Councillor Kaufman and Acting Mayor Croson. You did say 3 years. I've been pushing for a revamp of this for much longer than that, but it took the 2 of you to get it done, so thank you. And thank you to all the staff and administration that helped. Ms. Hilford, you had a last slide there, and I didn't have this presentation, or I didn't see this presentation. These still to be determined sections. Can you help me with that?
Yes. As I mentioned in my final review, which was already in process with legal and being published, I did another review and noticed that because we're heavily into elections right now, that the first 2 items, maybe the first 3 items, were missed from being considered in the bylaw and maybe should be considered in the bylaw. I guess actually the first 4 items are with regards to an election year. And then the 5th one, I just noticed that there were less information in the new procedure bylaw with regards to the bylaw process, signing bylaws, amending bylaws, all that, than there was in the current bylaw. So that we should probably, administration, take a look at that and make sure it is complete and that we didn't miss anything on our end.
So I guess just the follow-up to that is that needs to be done before, because there was a schedule put in front of committee that we could follow to implementation of the new procedure bylaw. Does that need to be done first?
And we could talk about those today. I can walk you through the thinking behind those if you want, and then committee can give us some feedback and we can incorporate it going on to council. And maybe council committee doesn't want to touch those at all. That's fine too.
I'll ask, if I can, I'll ask Councillors Kaufman and Acting Mayor Croson their thoughts, since you were part of this. Should we tackle those today as committee, or is it something that there should some go away time and come back time? I'm curious, because I don't know how long it would take.
Before I ask Acting Mayor Croson, I see Mr. Lowen's put his hand up. Mr. Lowen, you have a comment on that?
Just from a legal perspective, if the committee here felt that there were further changes required to the bylaw, my recommendation would be that you give us those instructions and that we go away and come back to the governance committee to make sure that we get the wording right, rather than go directly to council. So just happy to make any changes, but this is a large, complex, and interrelated bylaw, and any kind of changes need to be thought out for some period of time. Did you want to add anything to that, Ms. Shigehiro?
Yeah, no, those were my thoughts exactly.
Ms. Shigehiro, you still have snow in your picture. Mine is nice and sunny.
I'll have to update my picture.
Thank you. Of the 5 that are on the list, my assessment is only number 3 and number 5 would be critical. Number 3, because the next council will have to determine deputy mayor and acting mayor. And number 5, to ensure that those particular sections 195 to 208 or 198 to 207, whatever that was, needs to be in order as well. Either to Mr. Lowen or Ms. Shigehiro first on item number 5, we're clean and up to date on those. Everything looks okay.
I'll just defer that to Ms. Shigehiro.
Okay. Sorry, what was number 5? Was that relating to bylaws?
Yes, Ms. Helford identified sections 198 to 204, just ensuring that they're clean. We had limited or reduced the number of sections around bylaws, but we wanted to make certain we had our I's dotted and our T's crossed. And
I would have to have a closer look at those.
All right.
From my recollection, anything that was taken out on my drafting was already from the MGA. So if it was removed, it would be covered in the MGA.
Okay. All right. Thank you. In terms of number 3, then, because this bylaw actually would come into effect for the new council. Number 3 then strikes me as being the one that maybe we should provide some guidance or input upon, unless we just go by the practice that's been utilized, or the next council goes by the practice that's utilized. Otherwise, I think they could address everything else that's on the list. Councillor Crowson, can I get a response from you first and then to Councillor Carlson?
Yeah, I'm fine with both of those. Yeah, I mean, to me, there is a process right now for deputy mayor and acting mayor. I don't know if it's actually written down, but there is a process, and that could be easily transcribed into a written document. But you're right, if we miss something on bylaws, we need to confirm that. I agree with Ms. Shigehiro that we were trying not to duplicate anything out of the MGA, because if that was changed, we didn't want to change this. So, but it's just confirming that, I think, with the last part.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 thoughts. Process for determining DM and AM. I think following the process we already use for the city clerk's office to draft something, the new council can change it. We've done that. We've said flip Carlson with Crowson here to make it a little better. So I think if they draft it on the current process, and then council can amend as need be, because I believe the bylaw speaks to that it's just approved by council. And so the direction would be for the clerk's office to draft something based on the current practice. Does that make sense?
Kind of. Does that make sense to you, Ms. Helford?
The clerk's office does not have the current process written anywhere. We don't have, yes. So if we don't want to include it in, and we want to get input from council for sure. So my suggestion would be if we don't include it in the procedure bylaw, maybe it could just be a resolution of council prior to the organizational meeting, or actually the last meeting of council, which I think is in September.
So for clarification, Ms. Helford, you're stating that this council at the meeting in September then would pass a motion stating that the schedule be determined based on placement in the results of the general municipal election in the process that we've used to date.
Yeah, that would be fine. If there was a process that was approved by council, I would be comfortable with that. David, did you have anything to add? No? Okay, thanks.
Thoughts, Councillor Carlson, Councillor Crowson.
Just on that, I guess, so council could approve a process at a future date. It doesn't have to be enshrined in the procedure bylaw, or would it be in addition to?
It could just be a resolution of council. I'm fine with that. And then eventually maybe an amendment to the new procedure bylaw when we're ready to do that. But I feel comfortable, again, having all procedures of council in one document so they don't get lost or forgotten or anything. So I think that would be a good place for it.
Just to play devil's advocate, sorry, Belinda, sorry, Acting Mayor Crowson. Honestly, I think every council should just decide on their own. The process of, well, you came in first in the election, so you're deputy last. I don't know who brought that in. It never really made sense to me. Like, honestly, I think every council should look at it and create a schedule because we're not full-time. We are part-time. A member of council may say, I've got summers off because I'm a post-secondary instructor or something. So I would like my deputy mayorship or acting mayorship. I'm not pointing fingers at it. I'm just saying. Another member could say, I work full-time in summers because I'm an actor. I'll put it that way. And so give me mine in fall or spring, so to say. So I don't know that it needs to be a hard and fast rule or procedure. I think council should look at it and say, here's how my schedule works best. Here's how I'd appreciate it functioning. Does that make sense to anyone?
So to your point, though, Councillor Carlson, I believe what's being asked here, and what Councillor or Acting Mayor Croson and I have attempted to do, is to codify the process. So you end up with 9 new members of council who have not gone through this before. So at least the procedure bylaw would have a statement that the order of deputy mayor and acting mayor schedule shall be determined by council following the general municipal election. So even a simple statement as that puts it in the procedure bylaw so people understand the rules of engagement. Here's how we're going to determine. If it's not addressed in the procedure bylaw, as it's currently not, then council would do exactly what you just did and ask the clerk to create a process, but the clerk's office doesn't have a process. So we either codify it as something simple that each council will determine the process, or we provide them with a process that can be changed or amended down the road. Mr. Lowen.
Just listening to the debate, just wanted to make sure that the committee understood that there's maybe a middle path. If you codify a process in the bylaw, that's a lot harder to change or to make exceptions to than if you just did it by resolution or a policy. And so maybe you get the benefits of codification, but retain some of the flexibility Councillor Carlson was discussing if you follow the clerk's suggestion of passing something by resolution.
Yeah, and remember, Councillor Carlson, when we said this is supposed to be based on common sense, etc., one of the first parts of this is anything that isn't by law, like by provincial law, can be changed if it's the will of council at that time, if it's more useful. So we tried to build that in as well. So here's the way it's always been done, but here's your out for if the entire council wants to do it somewhere else.
Right, and I thought, because I didn't make a note on this section, so I don't know that I did actually read it. I thought it was codified in here that council will approve a schedule of acting and deputy. So that is.
So it's in there. It's in there that they'll approve one, but not how will they approve it.
How?
Right. Yeah. Ms. Shigehiro?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's in section 17 on page 6.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe Mr. Lowen, then, do you have advice on appropriate wording for that middle ground?
Not ready at my fingertips. So this is all just coming at us today. So happy to work with the clerks on coming up with that wording. I'm sure in terms of wording a resolution, they'd be well on their way to having that wording as well.
Okay.
But I did hear them say that the current practice wasn't codified anywhere. So there's always the possibility that once we codify someone's understanding of it and then show it to everyone, it might not represent everybody's consensus understanding. So.
Okay. All right. Councillor Carlson, would that satisfy
yes.
your thoughts there? Councillor Croson?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, thank you. So if we could maybe instruct then that something be drafted regarding point number 3 on the process regarding deputy mayor and acting mayor, that would be great. And number 5, we're just, I believe, is leaving it to Ms. Shigehiro just to double check that everything is in order there. As for 1, 2, and 4, is Governance SPC comfortable with leaving those matters to the next council to look at, next council Governance SPC to look at and consider and provide amendment to the bylaw?
May I see 1, 2, and 4 again? There we go.
Sorry.
Thank you.
If I could explain a little bit with regards to the nominating committee, the procedure bylaw states that council appointments would be considered by the nominating committee. So we'd have to consider whether we want the nominating committee sitting before the organizational meeting. As well with public members, do we want any members of council after nomination day, perhaps shortlisting and interviewing public members? Those were the considerations.
Councillor Carlson?
Perhaps it's just me, but I have no issue with following standard practice because it would be recommendations forwarded to the incoming council, correct? And they could approve them or go back to the drawing board should they desire. Is that, or am I misunderstanding the question?
So the recommendations, would they be forwarded from the boards, committees, commissions themselves without council being included in the process? Because this is a new process prior that was implemented after the last election, that council and the chair of the BCC would shortlist and interview. And now council and the chair and the vice chair will shortlist and interview prior to the organizational meeting.
Mr. Chair, maybe I'm just being thick
David,
here.
go ahead.
Oh, thanks.
David?
So I was just going to say that in years past, what has happened is the new members have been selected by the new council. So, and Sherry and I talked about this, and we put provisions that for the public members that they will be appointed by year end, because the difference between this term versus in 2017, all the public members start January 1st as opposed to October 22nd. So it gives you some time to appoint them. So you don't have to appoint them like to be effective November 1st, even though that's when council is. The members from the public become effective January 1st. So there is some time. So if you were to follow sort of the thinking from past election, what you would be doing is you would be having the new council members participate in the selection. And so is that what you want, or do you want the old council to participate?
And if I could just add, the council orientation is very heavy after the election and will take a lot of time, so it may be difficult to interview, but David is right about that process.
My gut, if I can, Mr. Chair, is I would have if I was a newly elected member of council, I would have no issue provided all the processes and practices were followed and a list of recommendations came forward that from a past council to a new council. So I would have no issues, but I can't speak for everyone.
Rosen, your thoughts on that?
I can see how we missed this because it has changed since the last election. I'm leaning towards the same thing as Councillor Carlson. If it's recommendations, they still have the choice of, accepting or not. That's, the choice of that new council. It does have some of the work done for them. And it is going to be done by people who have a bit of a background. So it kind of balances it, going, this is what we're recommending, accept it or not, as you move ahead. But we know you're going to be overwhelmed with the orientation, and we thought we'd try to help you out. I find that to be a good balance.
Okay. Ms. Hilford, you got sort of a feel then of the committee. I think that's the balance as well. We have definitely intensified the orientation process, and for the purpose of good governance, for the purpose of ensuring that the new council comes in and knows what they need to do. This is probably a good opportunity for us to support them in a different way. So do you know what wording would need to be provided for that then as well?
I believe that we would just leave the procedure bylaw as is then, if we wanted to deal with those matters after the organizational meeting with the new council. David saying there is a provision in the bylaw already.
It doesn't allow for the old council to start the process. So maybe what we'll do is we'll work on the wording and provide proposed amendments to you at that time.
Okay, Ms. Shigehiro?
No, sorry, that's fine.
Okay, all right. Is everyone comfortable with that then? Okay, hearing no objections. Is that on 1 and 2, or is that on just on 2?
It's on 1.
It's on 1.
So number 2 is whether you'd want to have the nominating committee sitting after nomination day to consider council appointments. But I guess in an election, we don't know the members, so.
Yeah.
We'll have to look at the wording of that then for an
So
election.
right now what the process is, or proposed and was and is that you have the election on October 18th, the swearing-in ceremonies, which is the first part of the organizational meeting, will be the following Monday, and then the formal organization meeting, the second part, will be the Monday following that. And at the second organizational meeting, that's when you would have the appointment of council members to the various committees. So in that 2-week time, the nominating committee, which would consist of the 3 members, acting mayor, deputy mayor, and mayor, would have to consider what the input was from each council member to determine who sits on what, or at least provide a recommendation. And the problem would be is you don't know who the nominating committee is, because who is the acting and the deputy mayor?
Timing as well. It's very tight timing.
Yeah.
Councillor Carlson?
It is tight timing, but I thought this was already part of the orientation process, and I'm struggling to remember. But I believe in the orientation process there is a day or an afternoon where we go through the BCCs, give the new members of council all the information about them, and they fill out their little list of what they're interested in. So I thought this was already.
It is Thursday, October 28th, and that's for the Monday meeting. So to have, what David's saying is to have the nomination committee sit prior to the Monday would be very difficult when the new council's just learning about committees and what they want to sit on and providing their preferences. They probably need a day or 2 to do that. So my recommendation is they probably just should go straight to the organizational meeting, direct to council.
Is the problem just in the timing? Like, is this just because we're trying to be organized and because
it's the timing and it's a new council, right? We wouldn't be doing it before because we don't know who the new council is. We would start this process a few weeks prior to organizational meeting.
Can it be done after?
We have committees starting a few weeks after that with the SPCs. Could be done.
Yeah, I think this is what Councillor Carlson was trying to address, is that we've got the committees of council, so the SPCs. That's a process that's addressed almost immediately in the orientation process. And then we've got our committees, our BCCs that are populated by the public. Are we combining the two in this conversation, or are we dealing with them separately?
We're talking about council appointments to SPCs and BCCs.
And right now, how many outside? Sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. How many of those are outside of the SPCs? I'm thinking LHA, Green Acres, Police Commission. Airport will be done, I think.
It may be.
No, it will
around
be.
10, I imagine, right? David's checking, but I imagine around 10.
And I guess here, I hate to do it, but it is all about timing. And it happened to me my first term. We showed up and our orientation was minimal and nothing. And we filled out these reams of paper, and literally we went down to the organizational meeting and the nominating committee had just said, Carlson, you're on this, Croson, you're on that, Kaufman, you're on this. We said, okay, and immediately went for lunch, and I was told, oh, by the way, you leave on a flight tomorrow for your CUDA meeting. So it is rather abrupt, but we can also change. Like if we get appointed, if I get appointed to CUDA, we'll say, on a Tuesday, and a month from then, we've actually had a chance to review stuff, and I say, Councillor Kaufman, will you switch CUDA with me for this? We can change it. So I mean, I know there's a panic, but I mean, if we have to legislatively appoint, people just get appointed, and after a month or two of figuring it out, things can change. Is that not like the common sense approach?
Yeah, they can be changed. That's no problem. Yeah. Whatever council desires.
Yeah, I know it is rushed and abrupt, but it's the timing.
If you're new on council, it's drinking from a fire hydrant, no matter how we try to do this.
Yep.
And I think we try to just make this simple. It happens quickly, be ready. I mean, that's why you're running for council, is you should be knowing what's going on, get on those things and continue.
Be easier if we were full-time.
Well, that's not going to happen. So let's approach this being rooted in reality. Ms. Hilford,
if I may speak, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr.
In terms of, if you discount the SPCs, which it would be the most popular one, and the ad hoc committees, it'd be less than 5.
Yeah, there's not that many.
I didn't think there was that many, so.
Because fortunately, the governance review resulted in a number of those being not having council attendance.
Let's use a term we've used all day. We rationalize those.
Yes.
Okay. Does that provide clarity on 1 and 2 then?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So the last one remaining is number 4. Do we just want to declare a stance, since that's the practice of the current committee or the current council, is that there would be no meetings held after nomination day? Do we just want to declare that and the next council can either accept or amend?
I would support that, Mr. Chair.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, if we could have some language around that then, please, would be appreciated.
Okay. We can do that, as long as law is okay with that.
Keep in mind, everything will be debated when this comes to council, and everything will be debated by the next council.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Oh, sorry, were you saying that as a negative?
No, actually, I like debate.
Yes. Okay. All right. Does that deal with the list, Ms. Hilford?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Carlson, question number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for my lengthy question. First question about the BCCs, and I didn't write down the sections. I just wrote down my notes. I'm sorry. Is there anything regarding once we appoint either members of council or members of the public to BCCs, is there any language in the procedure bylaw about removal? I didn't see any, but granted that I only spent 2 days reading it, and I may have missed it.
There is.
There is. Thank you. I couldn't.
We are checking.
I can offer a free travel mug to the person who finds it first.
Oh, I've got a tote bag. I'll throw into the kitty.
So we have in there that they're disqualified? Yeah.
Disqualified, but.
And that's the section I was looking at, section 48C.
Thank you.
Disqualified from the board, commissioner, committee if they have 3 consecutive unexcused absences from those meetings.
I saw that about disqualification.
I know we had discussed once that the chair could request somebody being removed.
Well, that's I don't, just speaking plainly, it's happened in past history that there have been requests, and there was no mechanism. I was wondering if there should be a mechanism if council decided.
And I'm wondering if that's in the public member code of conduct, which I'm...
Yeah, maybe that's where I read it. I know we had talked about it and had put it somewhere, I thought.
Okay, should we continue the search for that, or do we wanting to wait for an answer to that? Do you want to move on to your next question, and I will find an answer to that?
Certainly, I think it was something I thought should be considered. So if we can,
David is looking for it. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. I'll move on to my next one, and I apologize that I didn't write down the sections, but the area where it talks about the meeting start time. And I'm scrolling.
Section 61 is dates, times, and locations of meetings.
Thank you.
So it'll be 61 or just after.
I don't. Oh yes, 62. It says normally commence at 1:30. They actually commence at 12:30 with a motion to go in camera if needed. Is that not?
It actually says it says excluding closed meetings in that.
I get that, but our current practice is to call the meeting to order, is it not? And then motion to go in camera? Maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Thinking back to the conversation around this would have been one of the earlier conversations. So this might be section 62, might be something that formed from previous practice as opposed to what we currently do.
I think we were seeing them as two separate meetings. There's a closed meeting, which is held, and then there's an open meeting, which is held. I think that was the conversation that came to this. If that's an incorrect assumption, somebody can correct me.
The regular public meeting does start at 1:30, but a closed session, as Councillor Carlson indicated, should start in public session, and I think that's what you're alluding to, that it should start.
Exactly. So, just for clarity, so people know that we're actually starting the meeting at 12:30, but there is an in-camera session, or there could be an in-camera session. I didn't know how to word it. It just sort of twigged to me when I was reading it. Have we lost our chairman?
No, no, I'm on split screen, so
yep, no worries.
Do I have that funny face?
Yep, you were just frozen there for a minute.
Yeah, good. Let me turn that off. There we go. Okay.
So I don't know if it needs anything. It just struck me that we do meet in public at 12:30 with a motion to go in camera. So it was just.
Councillor Crowson?
I'm sorry, I've gone down to 1:30 and looking at the proceedings of a closed meeting, which are not specific to our closed meetings held on public days.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to see if we found a way to connect those two. It doesn't look like we did. So 62 may be incorrect.
Would proper wording perhaps be all public council meetings?
Yeah.
All public council and standing policy committee meetings?
Yes. Yes.
And that would be helpful because sometimes we have a lengthy in camera. We've started at 11 or 10.
Yes.
So that would, I think, perhaps just adding the public then gives the clarity.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, that was.
Yeah. Ms. Shigehiro?
Yeah.
Has the practice changed? Do you go downstairs and open the public meeting and then make a motion to go to a closed meeting?
Yes.
I believe so.
No, we haven't changed it since like being on Teams. We haven't had an in-person ones for a long time. Before we went on Teams, the practice was not to go downstairs and open it. It was to open it upstairs.
So you're opening directly into a closed meeting?
De jure de facto. De facto, yes. De jure, what we're trying to do is open as a public meeting and immediately goes to closed session. So we're not opening in a closed session.
No, but we're not going downstairs and then going upstairs, I think is so technically we should be doing that in person, is starting downstairs and then moving upstairs, which audit committee does, but council doesn't.
Yeah.
So if you are opening, you're having your public meeting so that you can have your motion to go to a closed meeting, it probably should say 12:30 because you have your public meeting starts at 12:30, but you immediately make a motion, make a resolution to go in camera. You're still starting the public meeting at 12:30. Because section 131 says before holding a closed meeting, council or the BCC must adopt a motion in a public meeting.
Yeah. So I think we do have to change it to 12:30.
Except then it won't hold for SPCs.
Damn it.
So what if we say all public portions? and I recognize what you're saying, Ms. Shigehiro, is that is in and of itself a public portion. If we call the meeting to order at 12:30 and immediately go to closed session, do we need to parse out the fact that a council meeting is going to be different than an SPC or public hearing or special meetings? Do we need to be two sections or a subsection of some sort?
I just think you add another statement going, closed sessions start at 12:30. Like, I think you just add to this part. Like, the closed session of the public meeting starts at, I think with wordsmithing, it's there. We know what we mean. It just needs wordsmithing.
Except during SPCs, the tradition has been to start at 1:30 and then, if needed, go into closed at 1:30. So that maybe that needs to be two separate sections.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Absolutely. Resterson?
A few of the SPCs have actually also had a similar practice with their closed sessions, not at beginning at 1:30, rather 12:30,
Yep.
Right.
as determined by the chair of the respective SPC.
All portions of the meeting the public are interested in. But closed session raises quite a bit of interest as well, or private meetings, as people sometimes refer to them as. Okay, are we wanting to do the wordsmithing here, or should we leave this to legal and the clerk's office to come up with appropriate wording for section 62? Do we feel that it needs to be addressed? Councillor Crowson?
Where Councillor Carlson's coming from, I can certainly see members of the public then thinking that we're hiding something if we don't mention the 12:30 start to the closed meetings, and that certainly isn't something we would want in here. I think the reason it's written as it is because we're trying to just say, hey, in general, if you're interested in watching, attending, etc., it starts at 1:30. So that was the idea here, was just to make it short and simple, but we do have to somehow figure out how to say, in camera meetings usually will start earlier. So yeah, I don't think we can quite wordsmith it here. I would like to see what legal and city clerks would like to come up with. I think they've heard what we're saying. So
okay.
I don't think wordsmithing is going to do it right now.
Okay, if that's the will, and then that's okay with Ms. Shigehiro and Mr. Sarsfield, you're both okay. Good, thank you. All right, Councillor Carlson, your next one.
I'm sorry if these are causing any
No, I think now you realize why it took 3 years to get here.
Oh no, I think you realize why I gracefully fled away from the subcommittee.
I have an answer to the previous question about the.
Oh, yes, please.
If that's okay. So the question was asked about, can we remove someone, public member? And it is in the public code of conduct. There's a section which deals with that specifically. So.
May I ask what it says, David?
You can ask. Let me just find it. Let me just find it again. I had moved on. So what it says, oh, now I can't find it. But what it said was really, I'll find it again. I'll come back, sorry.
I think it essentially is if the chair requests it, it comes to council and to be considered. I think it's along that line.
Yeah, what it does is says that council shall remove anyone who doesn't comply with the code of conduct. So.
City Solicitor here, just want to expand on that answer for the committee. Certainly that bylaw covers situations where there's a code of conduct breach, and then the procedural fairness, you know, there's a hearing, people get to hear both sides, but it still is within the common law power and authority of council to revoke appointments that they've made. The challenge is, and why this code is good, is if it's a particular individual for a particular reason, then you engage procedural fairness concerns. But if, for example, council lost, you know, we just don't think that committee XYZ is executing their duties in accordance with the way that we want, you could just dismiss all of them. And then there's no procedural fairness engaged because you're not making any allegations. You're not, you know, there's nothing, you know, and you have that power and that authority as council, not you as committee, but you as council, you know, it doesn't need to be in a bylaw. That's just inherent in your authority of appointment.
Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing.
Does that, oh, go ahead, sorry.
What I'm hearing, Mr. Chair, is nothing needs to be in the procedure bylaw around it because there are other policies, legislation that deal with it.
I heard your question differently though. Does that include a member of council?
Yes, and it is part of my question.
No. No, it doesn't, and Mr. Sarsfield might confirm this for me, but the code of conduct for public members bylaw does not apply to members of council.
But in the council code of conduct, it says that there are repercussions, that the council can apply penalties to whatever they may consider to be applicable if there is a possible contravention of the code. So you got to look at both bylaws.
Yeah, and the other limitation that's important for you to remember is under the council code of conduct bylaw, only other council members can make that complaint. So not like a public member of a committee wouldn't be able to.
But the investigator could recommend that people, a councillor be removed from committees, and then it would be up to council.
That's correct. If a councillor brought that complaint and that was council's will, that's one of the things they could consider as a sanction.
Okay, does that answer your concern, Councillor Carlson, then?
I think so. I just wanted to make sure it had been considered, but I think it fits. I'm good if there are other avenues that deal with it. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Carlson, you had the floor. You're on your 5th apology for not noting sections and for saying.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry. And once again, I think it's under the presenting to council. Yeah, section 96C. It says limit the presentations to 5 minutes unless the chair allows. Is it just the chair or is it the will of the body, the members? Like, I'm just saying if I'm the chair and I really like something and I want to give them 4 hours, nobody else can say back off.
Don't forget that things like point of order, point of privilege, etc., are always part of it as well. So the rest of the committee or council can challenge the decision of the chair, even in extending it. A smart chair is going to look to everybody else and go, "Do you mind?" Okay. But it is the chair who, in effect, would be the one who'd make the decision and then be challenged or not.
Okay. if you're cool with that, I just thought it seemed rather gives the chair a lot of power in extending presentations for those that they may like. So that was my only concern. But if you think that a point of order could be raised, then
well, in the fairness of chairing a meeting, sometimes chairs allow members to continually apologize for not having things in order. So it can go both ways.
Fair point.
But that technically is the role of the chair. The chair is the one who, on behalf of the group says yay or nay. A good chair does it on behalf of the group.
Okay, excellent.
If I may, Chair Kaufman, an alternate suggestion would be by general consent of the body.
That's what I was trying to go with. Because honestly, I'd like it enshrined, and this is just because it's happened in the past, and I would love it to be able to, the 5 minutes is up, how much more time do you need? Get consent. That even that alone sends a pretty strong signal to speed up, or so that's kind of what I was hoping to get to, like general consent.
General consent. Acting Mayor Crowson on general consent?
To me, that's what the chair is supposed to do, so I'm fine with it.
Okay, codify.
Maybe we just need to make sure we have good chairs.
We don't get to choose that.
Oh, damn it. I mean,
if you could affect that change, then please, that would be appreciated. All right. Next one, Councillor Carlson.
And I can't remember where this was. It was the last in, first out. And I think it was in motions. I'm trying to recall.
probably with amendments.
And can somebody explain why last in, first out?
We'll let David, the parliamentarian,
they're nearest
take
to
that
the
one.
exit way, so nobody gets trampled.
Mr. Sarsfield?
So if I could explain, so let's say we have a motion to buy new flooring for the council chamber. And an amendment is made that the flooring shall be red in color. And there's a further amendment that it shall not exceed $100,000 in cost. So first in, last out. So what we would be dealing with first is the amendment dealing with the cost. That passes, then we go to the red, then we go to the motion as amended, So you go back, you work your way down the ladder and then back up the ladder.
All right.
That's based on Robert's rules, I believe.
And sure. And it
I
is,
couldn't,
yes.
I couldn't recall it from Robert's rules.
But
so that was.
But really, that's how you deal with amendments all the time, right?
Okay. Perfect. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, just for clarification, the public, we are not recarpeting council chambers. Thank you. Your next question.
But red sounds good.
The section on rescinding, and can someone tell me where that was? I've lost it.
176.
Oh, thank you, Bonnie. Ms. Halbert. Rescinding motion, yes. Is made at a meeting 6 months or more. We need a certain number of votes after 6 months to get it rescinded. Is that, it's not just a majority, simple majority?
I believe the committee wanted to go with 2/3.
Okay. And I guess the timing that it has to be 6 months, nothing sooner.
It can be whatever committee desires.
Because I'm thinking after 6 months, I'd be fine with a simple majority. For me, within 6 months, I would want a super majority, a 2/3 or what have you, because that limits it. But I'm just spitballing here, and maybe there's another way to approach it that I missed. Say we pass a motion saying we're going to apply for grant Z for project A and B, and 3 days later, project C has come up that is actually 92% applicable, less cost is the best bang, but we already passed a motion. We can't reconsider or rescind for 6 months.
No, actually, we can.
Okay,
City
thank you.
manager, if you look at 179, the city manager may request something with it before that, and a member may also do it with a notice of motion. So there are other options in 178 and 179.
There are, but that, I think that's still, because the previous section still talks about 6 months. And so that this is how you can do it, but it still has to be after 6 months. It was my reading. Perhaps I misunderstood.
So 170, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Ms. Shigehiro, you put your hand up.
Section 177 does say the chair may determine that a rescinding motion is out of order if it's been considered in 6 months or less. It doesn't say must. So it is a may. So council could, consider the rationale for rescinding the motion. So it's not a compulsory considering it out of order.
Okay.
This goes, Councillor Carlson, if I recall the sort of the genesis and the conversation around this, this goes to council's ongoing concern about members bringing things back repetitively.
Mm-hmm.
Something constantly comes back, and I can bring a motion every single meeting and keep trying to get it. So the 6-month limiter tends to be more on the elected body than it's on administration. That's why you see the other 2 sections in there as well. And to Ms. Shigehiro's point, that's why it's the may. So I think in the back to the second section, the common sense approach to this, yeah, Project C suddenly qualifies for funding. Let's have the reconsideration on this. Councillor Kaufman is constantly bringing back motions on, I don't know, speaking hypothetically, ward systems or budgets or things like that. We love and appreciate Councillor Kaufman, but we're going to limit him to doing this every 6 months, unless he's managed to convince 6 members of council of otherwise.
Okay, the word may has given me comfort there, so thank you for that. Question on, if I can, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I'm cognizant of the time. It's 3:30. We've this meeting is scheduled for 2 hours. We're doing some very valuable work at the moment. Would people like just a 5-minute bio break, coffee, refreshing break, and we've got people in chambers who may not be able to sneak out here. Maybe instead of asking, is everybody okay? Are we okay for time with people? I'm conscious of clerk and legal especially. Are we good for time? Okay.
We're good.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break just to let people what they need. And we'll be back here. I'll set my watch at 3:37.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I love gardening, but as only, me, I don't eat everything, so I give away a lot of food.
This is a sound
Yes.
check, a sound check.
If anyone wants zucchini, talk to me.
I can trade you a turnip. Do you want to do a quick roll call, please, Mr. Westerson?
Certainly. Acting Mayor Croson.
Here.
Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Kaufman.
Present.
Councillor Morrow.
Councillor Morrow, I went back in my text chain because I thought I had seen something. Councillor Morrow had indicated when we switched to the 15th, he may be out of town. He has not responded to my text, so I'm assuming that he is perhaps out of town. So just as an update there. Okay. Thank you all. I appreciate that. And we'll continue through this. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. I two, and hopefully they're quick ones. The section on debate, I can't find it again, but it says council will be limited to 5-minute debate, and one debate.
That's 185.
Thank you.
Looking at section 185.
Yeah, each member may debate on an item for a maximum of 5 minutes, and 187. Each member may enter the debate only once on any agenda item. Oh, just to the committee members that discussed this, was there any thought to, because I like the 5-minute idea, but was there any thought to multiple debates? So I could do 2.5, and then something comes up in a further debate, and I wish to enter debate again. I've still got 2.5 minutes. I don't have 5 minutes each time, but in total, I would have 5 minutes. I could do 5 1 minutes or 10 30 seconds. Was there any consideration given?
I'll speak for myself. I think you've demonstrated the reason why. I don't recall any conversation about sort of a U.S. Senate type of, you've got a time limit and you have to operate within that time limit in terms of questions. Alternatively, I've got my 5 minutes. I'll pass 4 of my minutes on to Councillor Carlson. No, that was not considered. Councillor Acting Mayor Croson, do you recall any conversation around that?
The 5 minutes is actually in our current procedure bylaw, though we don't always follow it. So I think we adopted it from there, and we stayed with the practice we have. If you look at 189, it does allow the person who opens debate to also close, so they do get extra time. So we stayed primarily with it. When we were writing this, we looked at procedure bylaws on numerous other communities and didn't find anywhere in any of the Canadian communities about sharing minutes or about debating twice. So we stuck pretty much with what is the practice. But yeah, we didn't even see anything about can you debate twice? Because yeah, I think there's all times we'd love to debate twice or 3 times or 4 times. I'm just wondering how to control that.
And it was just my ruminating because it's happened. I'm sure it's happened to all members of council at one time or another. We buzz in for debate, and it's a very simple, thank you, Your Worship, just add my support to this and thank the committee. And then 3 other people debate, and you'd like the opportunity to say, further to my previous support, these are it's not a refutation, but maybe just, I don't know. There's always been that problematic, and just speaking bluntly, games are played or can be played under the system where you can always be the last to debate. I'm not saying it happens, but you can. And there's just, I don't know. I was just trying to think of a way.
No, I get entirely where you're coming from, right? Again, which is why we try to preface this going, this is supposed to be done in fairness. This is supposed to be done like that overarching principle hopefully will be applied by people using this. You could always add something, a proviso going, again, with general consent, someone could be allowed to debate a second time. I can see the slippery slope on that argument though.
Yep. Yeah, that's why I was like, you get 5 minutes, up to you how you use them and when you use them. That's, I don't know how. But
you get to bank your debate time.
yeah.
The purpose of debate, we're supposed to come to each of these motions open to being convinced.
Mm-hmm.
And if you choose to, thank you, Your Worship, want to thank the committee and the work, this is great, we're moving ahead, I'll support this. If that's how you choose to argue your point, that's how you choose to argue your point. If somebody comes in and says, thank you, Your Worship, appreciate what the committee has done, I can't support it for these 7 reasons, and you can think of 10 good reasons as to why they should, you should have actually stated that when you opened. We should actually be debating based on the arguments or the beliefs or the values that we bring. You should be using your 5 minutes wisely to convince me, because a thank you, I appreciate the work, this is good, it's going to help the community, may not convince me. Put forward the argument.
So Jeffrey, perhaps I'll ask you, or the parliamentarian in the crowd. And I'm not saying it's ever happened, but say all of council is debated except one member of council who in their debate says things that are patently untrue, and not is that a point of order, or is it a point of, because I've done those before, point of clarification, because that's debate is hard to go back. Debate should be back and forth, right? Because I have said I am completely opposed to this, blah, blah, blah. Then debate has gone on. And I'm like, they've raised some good points. I've changed my mind. And no one understands why my hand has gone up in opposition to what I've actually stated. So there's challenges. And that's what I was trying to find a loophole for.
If someone is expressing a blatantly incorrect, I was going to say fact, but if it's an incorrect, it's not fact. If somebody's making a blatantly incorrect statement, that's not a point of clarification. That's called point of order, because point of clarification really doesn't exist. You have to rise in a point of order. Somebody has violated the code of conduct, or they have violated the rules of engagement, the procedure by law, or whatever it is. That's an actual point of order. Soapbox for a second. You don't get to stand up and interrupt a speaker because you don't understand what we're doing. That's not a point of order. And I know that the clerk's office is going to really work on emphasizing that to the next council.
And it's not just if somebody's mean to you that you get to call a point of order. Sorry for interrupting.
Nope, I was going to rise in a point of order because you interrupted me, but that's okay. If that is your concern, that's a point of order, and good governance and a good chair ought to resolve that right then and there. I get what you're saying, and maybe if you wanted to consider this, that you've switched your view based on what somebody has stated, maybe then that's where you ask the chair, I know I was only supposed to speak once, but with your permission, I've actually changed my vote. Can I justify why I've changed my vote? I don't think a thinking, compassionate, interested council would actually refuse that. Oh, well, Carlson argued A, but now he's going to choose B. I think you should be afforded the opportunity to explain why. But Councillor X has made this statement, and now I've got a better rebuttal. I think that's what you end up getting into. And you're right, we don't debate. We express a viewpoint for 5 minutes. The idea of debate, and maybe we should change the word, the idea of debate doesn't exist at a council meeting. This is a debate, in a sense, yes.
And this is way better than what we normally do in council, because we're having good discussions.
I wish there was a way to codify and allow these types of things, but that's the job of committee, I guess.
Do you want perhaps the statement that with consensus, the chair may provide someone the opportunity to speak twice? He says, slowly opening Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Because the same rule that applies to you applies to everybody.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. I basically, it was for the philosophical discussion that I wanted, and knowing that you guys had considered it, or I would I'd prefer a different mechanism, but I don't have one to offer that doesn't open the box. So
And I'd also like preferential balloting and not first past the post. So
there we go.
lots of philosophical debates that we should have.
Agreed.
So Councillor Kaufman, just to respond to Councillor Carlson, that is the one major change, one of the major changes that we highlighted in our 32, which was that under the committee, you can vote, you can debate more than once. And that's the reason why you go to committee. So.
Yep, no, and that's what triggered me into wanting it at council as well. So thank you. Final question, final point. If a member of council wants to debate or vote against something on consent, they have to pull it off of the consent agenda. What happens, because then further down it says consent agenda must be unanimous. What happens if I don't pull something off and I vote against the consent agenda? What's the point of voting if it has to be unanimous?
Madam Clerk?
David's going to take this one.
Okay.
So what we were trying to say, and maybe the message was not clear, that anything on the consent agenda requires approval of council. If you wish to debate any one specific item, you ask for it to be removed. And so if you as a councillor wish to debate a certain item and you ask for it to be removed, then it automatically gets moved to somewhere else on the agenda. If just because you're outvoted 8-1, the others say, oh no, we'll leave it there, it's not really, that's not really what the issue is. The issue is you wish it to be debated. So it automatically gets removed, period.
And if I can add, if you want to vote against something on the consent agenda, that's when you would also pull it and vote against it to show that you're not in support.
And if I understand, if you vote against the consent agenda, everything gets added to the agenda.
Is that what happens? Because that was my concern.
That wasn't the thinking. So the vote on the consent agenda is if someone wishes to move an item, it does and gets debated further on. Anything that is left on the agenda and gets voted upon, and let's say the vote is 8-1, it still passes.
Oh, I thought it said somewhere.
If you wish it removed.
But
if it's not clear, then we'll make it clear.
I think Councillor Carlson's question is if it's not unanimous on the consent agenda.
Yeah, 194B.
It does say that, you're correct. I've never seen a consent agenda not get unanimous support in my experience, but I guess it could happen.
I remember, our discussion was if it doesn't get unanimous, it's added to the agenda. I remember having that discussion at one of our meetings. That's the fallback.
All the items in the consent agenda would then get put on the regular agenda?
See, I don't like that because that could just be jiggery pokery could happen. I'll vote against consent agenda every time just so that everything gets added and causes mayhem. I'm not going to do that. I'm just saying I could.
Heads up. Mr. Lowen.
Just from a legal perspective, I don't think this matters. If you were to consider the hypothetical of a bad actor who wanted to gum up the works, as it were, all they'd have to do is ask individually for each item to come off, and they would all go on, or vote against it at unanimous. The way that it's captured here really captures the practice that Mr. Sarsfield and Ms. Ilford were talking about, which is really anything on the consent agenda that gets passed is done so unanimously. And if there's something on there that you want to vote against, as Ms. Ilford said, you would have it pulled off.
It really puts the onus on Agenda Review Committee to make sure things in the consent agenda are things that are of a routine nature and not something that you're trying to hide.
Okay, then thank you for the explanations. And I have reached the end of my questions.
Thank you. We'll put a section in now about the number of questions. limited to. Mr. Lowen, did you have another statement, or is this a hangover hand up?
A hangover.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fox introduced that jargon to our organization. I quite enjoy that. Okay.
Mr. Chair, only because you raised it, is there anything in the procedure bylaw, and maybe I just missed it, about the number of questions or the time a councillor can take in questions? We have a practice of I will do 2 and then back out, because I know that practice came into being because there were members of council who basically would ask 32 questions in a row.
Yes, and I've learned to only ask 2 and then step out. And that has been the practice of the chair. There's nothing in the procedure bylaw about that. Is that something you'd like the bylaw to consider?
I mean, I know this is common sense, and we hope it's all kind and generous people on council, but I'm wondering if that does make sense. It's been a good practice thus far. Although I've actually learned that if I don't ever buzz in for questions, the rest of you tick off all of my questions as I go. So it's kind of, I could not ask a question in a meeting, but I just wonder, because there is that opportunity for grandstanding, we'll call it that.
Or for some people see that as doing your job.
But if the same person gets 20 questions constantly, never allows anyone else to ask a question, is what I'm trying to avoid.
Mr. Sarsfield, is there something, I'm just looking for the section right now about chairing meetings.
There's nothing currently in the bylaw regarding that. All it says is really that the chair, any member may ask questions during the debate. And so it's under the debate section. And we did talk about this at one point, and we did talk about putting limitations, and the conclusion was that any member could ask as many questions as required. So, and it's really more about chair protocol of just handling the questions. So for instance, in this particular meeting, I would say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, that Councillor Carlson has asked a number of questions all in a row. And there's been and really that's what it's been the practice, so that's fine.
I'm assuming that if Councillor Morrow was here, he too would have questions, and I would alternate as chair, as practice, alternate between Councillor Carlson and Councillor Morrow. I'd wait for Councillor Croson to put her hand up or identify if she had any questions. Yeah, it's.
So what we could do is we could cover that kind of protocol and etiquette in the orientation, as opposed to in the bylaw, because it would be difficult to quantify that. Because in this particular case, there is only one person who has questions. And that is not typically the case, but that is the case in this instance.
I think at last Civic Works SPC, we had almost an entire council present, and I know that Acting Mayor Croson sort of rotated through, and I think we all at some point say, I'll step out and let somebody else ask their questions. So perhaps an orientation, but maybe just cognizant. I don't know how you would enforce it, because again, I can be mayor and I can have my buddies, and my buddy's going to always ask questions first, and I'll give them 10 questions, and then I'll move to Councillor Carlson. Yep. Limit you to 2, and then I'll move on back to my buddies. So when we approached the creation of this bylaw, a lot of my consideration actually came through the eyes of how could council mistreat somebody? How could council use a procedure bylaw to penalize or punish or abuse a member of council? And so for me, it's always been an approach of it should be good common decency, common sense in terms of how we're running these meetings. And Thank you for raising the questions that you did, because you asked a lot of things that I know that we hadn't considered, and the issue of questions being one, in terms of how many, but the practice has been, and I think it was Mayor Tarlick who started this. You ask your 3 or 2 and we'll move on. And this is where the Wickersham supplemental came in as a way of sneaking in an extra one. I think it's the evolution of these things and to a procedure bylaw that treats everybody fairly and does not allow it to be used as a hammer. If you start, yeah, Councillor Croson.
Do you remember that somewhere in this, if I'm remembering correctly, I mean, again, 3 years, we have given the rest of council the ability to remove the chair from a meeting. Because if the chair is the problem, you need that as an option as well. And a good chair, I mean, we have that practice now, 2 questions each, it moves around. A good chair maintains things like that. A good chair tries to make sure everybody's involved in a meeting. But we know that occasionally you're going to get somebody chairing a meeting who does have an axe to grind or wants to, benefit their friends. So we did try to put things in like that too, going, okay, worst case scenario, you can do this.
If you're in the majority.
I think the people of Lethbridge were pretty smart about electing people who, like, again, we have to give, they are the electorate. They're going to put the people into those 9 chairs that they want. And then that is dealt with by the next election if they're not happy. I mean, at some point, we cannot try to think of every scenario.
We also have to be conscious of the tyranny of the majority.
Yes.
You may not agree or like your colleagues, and that's where the abuse can slide in. And I'm going to use the procedure bylaw as the hammer to make sure this person never speaks at a council meeting, which does not permit them to fulfill their role at council. So I get what you're saying. And I think I've heard the clerk say that through the orientation process in how to chair a meeting 101, this is the practice, and it will hopefully be something that gets monitored and maintained by members of council as council report.
We have been very cognizant, and when something happens, we have come back and looked at the procedure bylaw going, okay, something happened that wasn't to the benefit of council or this person or whatever. Have we considered this element? So we did try to think about how can we make sure that all 9 members of council are well treated by this bylaw, and how can we make sure it's fair to the public, and how can we make sure administration has, the respect they deserve when they're presenting. So we tried to think of all those. It's been interesting for, debates over the last 3 years. But I think in the end, we also realized we can't think of every possible problem, because somebody will try to sit there and think of a thing that we didn't think of just purposely.
There were things that actually came up this term that Councillor Croson and I immediately texted or emailed about that, oh, this should be in the procedure bylaw. So thank you to you and my colleagues for raising issues we hadn't considered this particular term. And I'm sure that will always be. So anything else from committee members? Anything else from staff? Legal?
I'm sad unicorn was taken out.
Yeah, we had a number of unicorns in there. Yes, just to see if we're paying attention. Unfortunately, legal was paying attention, and the hero went through and struck them all from the bylaws.
Yep.
So
yeah, we had one thing that it was not debatable that unicorns exist, and Sherry wouldn't let us keep it.
I think that must have come out before I got it. I don't remember seeing that.
Oh.
I even tried to find one spelling mistake to prove I'd read the whole thing, and I couldn't. So well done.
Clerk's office, anything additional?
For me, there is one typo on the sections, and I'd have to find it. I think, Ryan, it was like section 21 or something, right?
I believe it was section 21 referenced
when it says, yes, subject to section 2223. So I think that should probably be 22 and 23.
I was just going to write my own section 2223, 2223.
I think that should be 21 because thankfully the bylaw is not 2,200 sections long. We could try.
We worked on it. We worked hard to do that, but Okay, so that typo will be corrected. Anything else from clerks?
Not from me. Ryan, David?
Just next steps.
Okay. Are you asking or telling?
I would never dream of telling a counselor on what to do.
If you want to make a recommendation, yeah, so, if you want to make a
Sure. So we have provided a recommendation that it go to council and council with to adopt this and on effective a certain date and removal of certain policies. And what we would do is those things which were highlighted today, what we would do is we would include that in the body of the submission. These are the recommendations coming from the governance committee that may be debated and be added to the bylaw. If that's agreeable to legal?
That's certainly agreeable. The alternative would be we could just work with you and present a bylaw with those changes to council, and then just reflect in the cover report that was the wish of the committee. I think either way is acceptable, and happy to proceed either way.
I prefer option 2 that Brian just presented, that make the changes so we don't have to be amending.
Okay.
This would go to the next meeting of council then, July 27th for first reading?
If it would be available for first reading July 27th. Does that work for everybody?
Shigehiro, are you able to get the new version of the bylaw prepared in time for the clerk's timelines for council's timelines for the council meeting?
Agenda review is on Monday already.
Yeah.
I do not think I can get the amendments done by then. I can do them Monday. If that works.
For agenda review committee, could we have outline of what's happening and then you have it by Tuesday to put up? Does that work for clerks and for legal? Just so that agenda review committee would have to have the idea of what's happening, but wouldn't have the final document. And that would give you till Tuesday to have it ready to put up if everybody's would be in agreement.
I'm going to let David answer for me because I will be on vacation, so he'll be acting. So David, what do you think?
She's not asking about you being or about her being on vacation. Yeah.
I think if we can get it done, we'll do it. If it's not doable, then it'll go to the next meeting.
Okay.
All right. So I've heard good college try. Okay. Okay, except we're about to pass a motion that actually states give first reading on July 27th, 2021, which means it needs to be done.
So maybe we would take out that date.
At the earliest possible convenience?
To give first reading at a council meeting or something like that.
Keep it vague.
Vague is good.
Okay. And give second and third reading on.
Do you really want to say that? Because I would assume that you would just follow the normal process. Do you need that statement?
Reminder, there's 4 council meetings left before the election.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
because I don't know if you can give direction to council when you're going to give second and third, because there may be amendments that come from the remainder of council. I don't know.
The reason for the quicker timeline is just that if a member of council wishes additional time, we've got that capacity to build in another meeting. August 10th is the third last. The 24th would be the penultimate, and September 7th then would be the final meeting of council. So the August 10th deadline really gives you 2 meetings if there are challenges, whereas the August 24th gives you 1 meeting if there are challenges.
So I think you could just take out A and B. Just go 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
It's up to you, and also as follows.
Yeah.
But the point is, we're going to pass it on to council as soon as possible, and hopefully they will agree.
Okay. Members of the committee, are you okay with that? Mr. Lowen, sorry, I see your hand up.
Just Mr. Chair, looking at clauses 2 and 3, those actually happen automatically with the passage of the bylaw, and so don't need to be included in the motion. But you would need to, number 4 needs to remain.
Okay. So I'm seeing delete A, B, 2, and 3. Is that correct?
That would be my advice.
And as follows.
For 3 readings and adoption, I guess the as follows would just turn into and repeal City Council Committee's policy CC 46.
Yes, and I apologize. I think if we did that, we lose the important desire of the committee to have this in place for October 22. But that too is in section 216 of the bylaw. But it's important that council realize they need to give, if they want, they need to give 3rd reading before October 22, just to avoid all kinds of strange and interesting hypothetical legal questions.
So would this be a provision of and 3rd reading be held no later than September 7th, 2021?
That would work.
Okay. Okay, how are committee members feeling about this?
Works for me.
Okay, Councillor Croson, Acting Mayor Croson?
Yeah, no.
Okay, so I have a motion.
Works.
Excellent, I've got a motion from Acting Mayor Croson. Consider the proposed new procedure bylaw number 6250, a bylaw of the City of Lethbridge for the regulation of meetings of council and council committees, excuse me, for 3 readings and adoption as follows. 3rd reading to be held no later than September 7th, 2021, and repeal City Council Committee's policy number CC 46. Acting Mayor Croson.
Get her done. Oh, sorry, I called the question.
Councillor Carlson, any debate? Are you changing your mind?
You have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, well.
Seeing none, hearing none, questions called. Is anybody opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for your work on this and the recommendation to council. Thank you, legal. Thank you, clerk's office. And thank you to my colleague, Acting Mayor Croson, for chairing that process. Recognizing time again for 11, moving to item 5. Why does my agenda go immediately? 5.3. 5.1.
5.1.
Oh, okay. No, I just thought I was scrolling in the wrong spot. Council Work Plan Monthly Update. Be it resolved, motion from Councillor Carlson, be it resolved, the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council receive the Council Work Plan Monthly Update, May 2021, as an attachment 1 for information.
Mr. Chair, I did have a quick question on this, if I can.
Yes, go ahead.
The Airport Committee still is flashing yellow, and it talks about work we were doing 3 months ago. Is that just need to be updated?
Yeah, this needs to be updated before council, Council Carlson.
Okay, thank you. Because that's
Okay, do we want to just postpone this to the next governance SPC committee meeting then, or do you want to state it as
amended?
As amended or updated?
Because remember,
Yeah,
we
I
don't meet
don't
till
think-
September.
I recognize that, but it needs to be approved by this committee for a recommendation to council, that's all.
My recommendation would be not to take that forward this time.
Okay.
There's nothing, there are, 80% of it's been updated. There are a couple of sections that haven't. So there's nothing, I think, urgent by way of updates. So I would recommend it not go forward in the form it's in.
Okay, I've got a motion then from Acting Mayor Croson that this issue be postponed to the next meeting of Governance Standing Policy Committee.
I'll call the question. I like how my thoughts just show up on paper.
That's nice. Okay, any opposed to a motion to postpone? Seeing none. Okay, that's been done. Thank you. Item 5.2, Councillor Carlson, Operational Review Implementation Plan Update. Be it resolved, the Governance Standing Policy Committee received the Operational Review Implementation Plan as an one for information. Councillor Carlson.
Craig, unless there's, or sorry, Mr. Dalton, unless there's anything you wanted to highlight, I'll just call.
No.
Okay, I'll call for the vote.
Okay. Anybody opposed to that? Seeing none, that carries. Thank you. Item 5.3. This says it's moved by me, but I might actually just.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. N93 and N94 report back.
Yep.
Be it resolved. Sorry?
I was just going to, I haven't read the motion, but I was going to recommend, do a recommendation to council, just so that we close. My whole goal was to close the loop on this.
Excellent.
Further be resolved that council, our committee recommends council take no action on N93 and 94 at this time.
Okay, I've not read the motion yet, so let's just amend it to what has been proposed.
For just clarity's sake, does that capture the intent or?
No, because we were asked to make a recommendation to council, and my recommendation is that council take no action on N93 or 94 at this time.
So and further be it resolved.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The classic pass the buck to the next council recommendation.
Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council take no further action
on these initiatives.
N93 and N94.
Perfect.
Okay, Councillor Carlson.
It was my intent to clean up our books before the end of the year, and this was one that we've been sitting on for 3 years. I think the fact that we let it sit was recommendation enough to council that no action be taken.
Okay, procedurally, does there need to be an amendment then to the operating budget if council decides to take no further action because it has been approved? This is an approved initiative by council.
Mr. Chair, in speaking with the financial department last week, no amendment would be required for the budget. Okay. As it was a referral to the committee. There was no action taken to include it in the budget at the time.
I thought we had approved it, but I will trust that.
I read through it, and we did just refer it to committee. Okay. Committee was supposed to come back earlier if it was to be included, but we let it drag on. So
okay, excellent. Any debate or discussion on this, Councillor Croson?
No, I think Councillor Carlson was bang on. The fact that we haven't in 3 years taken this as a discussion suggests that there's no discussion here. It's not the right time, so no action.
Okay, and I completely support that as well. So call the question. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, that carries. I Item 5.4, I see it's got my name on it as well. This is Acting Mayor Croson, though, instead, if that's all right. Elected Officials Education Program, Muni 101, Council Orientation Training Sessions. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee to be determined at the meeting.
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't know what my motion here is. Are we accepting this for information? Because we didn't get any information.
Yeah. Mr. Westerson, do you want to update us on this?
Chair Kaufman, I could take this
Oh,
one.
yes, please. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Upford.
So I just wanted to inform committee that with regards to the council orientation that was adopted on June 15th, since then AUMA has announced their dates for the 2-day elected officials education program, and that's the Muni 101 council orientation training sessions. And the dates they chose for Lethbridge in person are December 2nd and December 3rd. And I'll just have Ms. Moncrief pull up the council orientation schedule so that you can see the dates. Civic Works SPC is scheduled for December 2nd. And I'm expecting the SPCs to be really heavy because they wouldn't have been sitting since September. And on December 3rd, we have the full-day Economic Development Elected Officials course at Tech Connect with EDL session as well. The cost of the Muni session 2-day course is $375 per person. So I'm just wondering if committee wanted to recommend anything to council with regards to amendments to the council orientation plan to incorporate this new training.
Thank you. I'm just going to jump ahead of you if I can, Councillor Carlson. These presentations are live. They're not recorded.
They said in person. They're coming
Okay,
to Lethbridge. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. Just a question to some of my colleagues that may have taken these recently. Acting Mayor Croson, did you?
No, I did not.
I'm wondering if they're more of a duplication of what we're covering in orientation. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what they're going to cover.
What I have found a lot with some of the AUMA courses, because I have done some of their stuff, because it's covering all of Alberta, sometimes it's of more use to a smaller municipality than perhaps our councillors, though of course it's always useful. But I think our orientation done through administration, et cetera, is much more targeted and more detailed.
That was, thank you, Acting Mayor. I was sort of thinking that myself. I've been to some and yeah, they're either targeted for the very small rurals that don't have a lot of infrastructure going with them, or yeah. So I don't know that it's necessary considering the excellent orientation that City Clerk's office has built, but somebody may want to take them. I don't know. I don't know how we approach it.
It does give you a wonderful opportunity to meet some of them councillors from other municipalities, which is something I think that we could all benefit more from, from that a regional approach. So there is the advantage there. If you go to things like that, you really do get to have a chance to talk and find out about, what's happening in other municipalities. So that is one of the great advantages.
My further question then, because I believe in past they've had these prior to the AUMA convention. Are they doing those as well? Like it was basically show up a day earlier and take these courses before the convention starts. Are they doing those as well? Like, is there another opportunity, or is this?
They are doing them around the province. I believe there's 10 session dates around the province, and they are starting, after the swearing in and going to mid-December. But I'm not sure whether there's any close by, but if somebody wanted to travel and take them, there is that opportunity to do that.
My gut is keep our calendar as is, and if a member of those committees or those days wants to go, they can figure it out.
Okay, and
that's my gut.
Okay, committee, I do have a second request as well. Apologies. Ms. Kathy Kiss, who is facilitating the advocacy session, is not able to make the date that council adopted on October 27th. She could, however, make the date on November 1st in the morning, and that's the morning before the organizational meeting. and the day before Team Lethbridge.
Jeffrey, you're mute.
Thank you. If we can just resolve the elected officials education program one first.
I'm sorry.
Is it the? No, that's okay. Is it the wish of the governance SPC then to just hold our calendar the way that we have it, and if a new member really wishes to go, they either find an alternative location or miss what goes on here? Is that the recommendation I'm hearing based on your question, Councillor Carlson, and your comments, Acting Mayor Crowson?
That would be my recommendation.
Okay, so we will leave our calendar on December 2nd and 3rd. Were those the dates?
Correct.
As is, and we will opt out of the elected officials education program.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Your second request then around Ms. Kiss.
Yes, she is facilitating the advocacy session, and that is scheduled for October 27th. She has advised that she has booked that date and can't make it. An alternate date that we were considering was November 1st in the morning. It's a 2-hour session. It would be before the organizational meeting.
So it's on a council day when people would probably have the whole day booked anyways?
I'm sorry?
It's on a council day, so people probably have that day booked, so we're not finding an additional day?
Right, it is on a council day, and it's the day before Team Lethbridge, and part of her session includes a little bit about Team Lethbridge.
Okay, thoughts of the committee on that?
Mr. Chair, just a question through you to Ms. Hilbert. Does that mean we have to change the schedule? We've never approved an orientation schedule before, and things have been a bit more fluid, but since we've actually approved one, do we need a motion to amend it?
You do need a motion to amend it. That would have to go to council. Council did adopt it, and that's as per council policy on the orientation policy.
Then I'm okay with making the motion to change that date.
Okay.
Just a clarification: are we switching it with something, or is it just pulling one day out and sticking it in an empty spot?
Not switching, yeah. It's empty on the morning of the organizational meeting, the morning.
Then I'm okay with that.
Ms. Moncrief, if you captured a motion there. If not, that's all right too.
Councillor Carlson is cool with it. I guess it would be accept the recommendation and forward it to council for their approval.
Mr. Dalton, who's appearing like he's a witness.
Yeah, no, my face is dark.
If that is you, Mr.
Right.
Dalton.
I had to redock. My computer ran down, so I'm speaking behind the curtain. Sorry, it's out of sequence. For Councillor Carlson's comment earlier on the council 12-month plan update, it's the second or third time, Councillor Carlson, you've raised a similar question. I've had my knuckles wrapped and been reminded that it's a result of when we have to file these documents to get them in front of this committee. So that change will be reflected next time, but there are a few other things that I think need to be looked at there. So no change to my recommendation. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. There was no knuckle wrap intended.
Thank you.
That's why he's in witness protection.
We have a motion on the floor that the changes recommended by the clerk be adopted. Is that what I'm hearing?
And be forwarded to council, yeah.
And be forwarded to council.
For their approval.
And it should be on the screen for you now.
There, thank you. And that's Councillor Carlson. Thank you.
Call the vote.
Any opposed? Not hearing any. That is approved. Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn. Mr. Westerson, I saw that there's 3 minutes here. This is not on the agenda. This is not on the agenda, but I'm wondering if the committee could move quickly to a closed session with the city manager regarding the city manager review, because we had conversation with Mr. Dalton about some timing issues, and I just wanted to check in on that. Since this committee is also acting as a subcommittee, is that acceptable, or are we going to lose the feed?
Should be able to make that work here. We may lose Shaw feed at 4:30 exactly, but after that.
We have included the regular, the agenda, the public agenda. So I'm just wondering if members of the committee are okay with a couple of minutes with Mr. Dalton.
Or do we have to amend the agenda?
Well, 2/3 of us need to amend the agenda, so as long as 2 of us agree.
Yeah, we should have made a quick amendment.
Okay, thank you. If we can quickly amend the agenda then to do this. My apologies for not adding it at the beginning.
I don't know, Councillor Kaufman. If you're human, that's just not good to hear.
Point of order.
You can remove the chair, if please.
I don't think I'd have the votes right now. Damn it. But I'll move that we amend the agenda to add the item, the closed session item.
Thank you. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, that's carried. The agenda is amended. So I will move, we move, Acting Mayor Crowson, move that we
move into closed session.
Closed session, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And we'll wait a moment until people are disconnected. Thank you, everyone.